Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, but most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. Now, you might be asking yourself, where the hell are you right now? I'm in a rental car right now, and I'm out on the road. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. As I had said, we're out here for TIA Technovations, which I'm going to be heading over there here in a little bit. I thought I had a place to go live in, but that turned out not working out. And now I went out and did some site visits this morning for some of the prospects who we're going after. But you know what? Things happen, you guys. And that's ironically what we're talking about today is we're talking about building your business in challenging markets and challenging times and everything. And, you know, I've had this gentleman on the show in the past, and, you know, it'd been a while, and he had reached out and we just reconnected. And I'm going to have him come on here and we're going to talk about kind of what he's doing in his business and kind of how he's navigating through this. So I got my good friend Sonne back on the show. Sonne, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hey, thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. Always a great moment to talk to you. And I know it's been a while since we caught up, and we figured today is a good day to do that.
Dude, it really is. And like I was saying, man, it's just so ironic that we're talking about building business in challenging markets. And, you know, it's never perfect, right? And I think that if there's one thing that I have come to realize over these, you know, again, I'm not an expert in entrepreneurship or anything like that, but it's more important to show up because the circumstances are never going to be ideal. They're never going to be perfect. You just got to put in the work. And I think that the more you hold yourself to that long term, you just learn how to deal with it, right? Because it's like, dude, I've had sound issues before. I've had audio issues before, video issues before. I've had all of that. And now it's just like, I knew that there was a solution. It's not what I wanted, but like at the end of the day, man, I know long term it is way more beneficial to show up and put in the work and then just go on from there.
No, absolutely. You know, it's all consistency and persistency. You know, it's like the sales saying, you know, you got to make those 50 calls, hear 50 no's before you hear one yes.
Yeah.
And that goes, and I would say, like in business world, you're not going to have all glamorous days. The things that you see, the celebrations that you see on LinkedIn, the pictures, they're a result of many months of hard work. You know, a lot of things in the background, always approaching the right customers at the right time. You're never going to have that. You're just going to have to keep on struggling, keep on, you know, just plugging away at it. And that's what results to greater things. It takes time. It takes a lot of hard work in the background, I would say.
Yeah, dude. And that's exactly it, right? And my car just shut off randomly right there. But you know, man, it's I mean, you kind of just got to roll with it. It's like, but it is so much more in today's day and age. It's just always easier to talk about your wins, and then you only talk about that, therefore you only want to show that. Most people aren't confident enough in themselves to show kind of like the real side of building stuff up. And, you know, that like those are the people that I love to follow the most and connect the most out there. The people who are building like real businesses and everything and aren't just talking about like, oh, I added X amount of followers, or, oh, look at this and look at that. It's like, no, I want to hear about what did you do when you thought it was all coming to a close? How did you handle it in business when you didn't know if you were going to make it 30 more days because capital was running out and maybe you were owed some money and stuff like that. So have you been in that situation before, Sonne? Have you ever had your back against the wall since you've started your company where you're like, I don't know if we're going to make it?
Oh, absolutely. Business itself is always having your back against the wall and figuring out what plan B is. It's never been easy for me either. You know, I mean, I think it's scary, but you just have to be that type of person. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I always tell, this is one of the arguments that I always kind of, you know, the dialogues that I have in myself is either I can have hardship all bundled up in the next 5 to 15 years, Either I could have a very predictable and safe life for the rest of my life and never have any growth.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started my venture. I said, you know what, this is the fight that we all have to fight. If we want to get ahead, we have to go against the waves. So there's been times where I've had, capital issues or other issues, but that's that's why we're wired the way we are.
Yeah.
Certain it's not for everybody. This is not for the faint of heart. I mean, I know a lot of people got spoiled in the COVID years, as we were talking about,
Yeah.
and people thought this was cake. Oh man, we could just make money. We can get into logistics. It's great, but that's not business.
Yeah.
Business is strategy. Business is you doing something to give value to your customers, but at the same time, having the pricing strategy to make sure it's affordable and feasible for you as a company. That's a long-term growth outlook and strategy. You can't just go out there and try to, underprice or outprice the market. It has to be some balance there.
Yeah. So I mean, you're up in the Seattle market, and you guys do. What are all of your guys' services, and kind of how are you competing out there in the market right now? Right? Because I think people also tend to fail to realize that there's competitors in literally every market of every industry that's out there. So how are you really separating yourself out there right now from a business development strategy, or what are some of the challenges that you're facing in your niche?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the whole COVID time when it was just a flood of freight. And
Yeah.
we got so much freight, so much opportunity across the board. But then that created a lot of competitors. A lot of newbies came into the market and, just flooded the market with services. Now we have some of the leftovers of that time
Yeah.
that are slowly, degrading or going out of business, and only the ones that were worth, their time and their water is the ones who's actually now staying in the market. So I think the name of the game is who can outlast your competition longer.
Yeah.
Right
No,
now, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, talking about outlasting your competition, is it more and you were talking about pricing, is it more of because I think a lot of it is it's strategy, right? It's not, I think the spray and pray methodology that was out there of hey, we'll do anything, just give us your freight. I honestly feel like those days are dead and gone. I truly do. And I feel like you need to have a niche, whether it's full truckload or whatever it is. And you really got to, have an actual strategy from a business development. And then it's a lane by lane basis, right? Because I think also the days of, hey, we'll just add you in and you can kind of bid on everything. I don't know if that's going to be a thing anymore. And not everywhere, right? I try not to make blanket statements, but I think that you actually have to have a more concrete strategy of hey, listen, we specialize in full truckload mid-Atlantic region, right? We go Florida up to the Carolinas or whatever that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, the customers are definitely more picky now. There's more choice out there. They want to work with service providers or partners that understand the industry, that have the experience. And I think furthermore, the service providers that have the cash flow in order to grow with their clientele. That's the major fact here. What happened in the past was it was just done out of necessity. There was so much freight and there wasn't enough capacity. So customers were pretty flexible as to who they choose. And they just said, hey, let's just get the job done. We need this. Hey, let's just, do what it takes. But within that whole scope, there was a lot of bad actors, the service providers that were not really up to par.
Yeah.
But now, there's a big shift on that. It's really hard to even get a conversation with a great customer these days because they've learned in those COVID times that, hey, you know what, if you go with a bad company or a company that has not gotten figured out how their operations should be handled, you're going to pay in the long run. But I think that's kind of where we differ. I think I've learned that through the whole supply chain crisis is, find a niche, find something that you're good at. Don't try to do everything. If you try to do everything, then you're just like anybody else. You're running on the treadmill. You're not getting anywhere. And that's what a lot of these companies these days, I think what is, differentiates a company with a future or a company that's just going to sustain and go out of business, out of existence eventually is The company that has a future has realized a few things in their operations. It's like, okay, we're not really good at that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't really be chasing this because we have a lot of competition. This is what we are good at. Why don't we just stick to that and strengthen that part of our, uh, sellings? But I
Yeah.
think you just have to be particular, very particular, especially these days.
I'm right there with you, man. And I think it's also, knowing like who you're going after from a business development standpoint, because I think, again, to draw those parallels of the falsities of, growing a business in COVID era was you could call like literally anybody and kind of get set up right away, right? Or
Yes,
without much resistance, we'll say, because of that. And I think that a lot of people that are out there that are really pushing to, like, they're calling these large, massive brands. And again, I'm not saying don't go after them, but like thinking that they're just gonna, one phone call get it done. And I think like back to your strategy, right? Like, who are you going after? Like, I know some of the large enterprise shippers that I'm personally going after. I know it's a 3-year sales cycle or a 4-year sales cycle. I'm preparing for it because in 4 years from now, I plan on having a lot larger organization than I do today. And I'm also going after accounts that I know that we could possibly onboard in the next 30, 60, 90 days. And their freight volumes can correlate to our current capabilities, right? Because if a customer came to me and said, yeah, man, we can set you up, but I need you to pick up 100 loads tomorrow, I'm not going to be able to do that, right? And it's one of those things. It's a tough pill to swallow, but you need to know what you're actually able to go after, and then as you're starting to prospect and build up off of that, that's when you can kind of grow and scale and really decipher it, right? Because there's different classifications of customers. You have those large enterprise shippers that take a long time. You have the mid-tier companies that, it might take a year to get in the door with them. And then you have the smaller companies we'll talk revenue that, what, it might take 30, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, to kind of get onboarded and start moving freight with them. And then your capabilities of your organization today can accommodate those freight needs, right? Because I think that's another oversight that's out there is it's like some of these large businesses, like they don't set you up from a capital perspective. You don't have the millions of dollars they need to run their freight, but then B, you can't do the volume that they require.
absolutely. I think that's the main factor there, what you just said. I think we have to be really careful as to how we grow as a company. We can't, I mean, yes, shoot for the stars, but also watch your cash flow. You can't go out and go get the bigger customers and hope to serve them and pay your service providers at the same time. That's why you've seen a lot of trucking companies go out of business in the last couple of years, is
Yeah.
because two factors. One is, because of that COVID situation, a lot of people that had no business being in this business are in this business.
Yeah.
A lot of offshoring, a lot of people sitting in God knows where dispatching trucks in America. And, a lot of bigger carriers bought into it too. Okay, fine. We got 100 units that we need to fill. Then why not just kind of work with some other, brokers or whatnot? So, a lot of, account receivables were unfulfilled
Yeah.
and companies went out of business. So I think we have to really, be careful how we progress as a small or medium-sized company. Yes, if you can go out there and get the Krogers and get the Best Buys, but can you serve them? Do you have the
Yes.
carrier network, or do you have your asset base? Do you have enough resources? Do you have the cash flow, the manpower, the systems that's it's going to take? Anytime you implement a new system, it takes a lot of cash. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of people. So your
Dude,
strategy has to be carefully thought out.
I'm glad you brought up cash flow, right? Because that's another thing that I swear, I don't know if maybe it's just the people that I'm kind of like connected with or the people that I follow, but nobody really talks about that when it comes down to being a broker as well and managing your receivables and your payables, right, at the same time. Because I saw my buddy Gabe Pankinen said it best the other day. Freight broker, or a couple weeks ago, he's like, freight brokers aren't supposed to be banks. And they take on a lot of risk that's out there. And, and that's what's going to be interesting, I think, here coming up is with the amount of brokers and are their receivables looking like? Are they shutting shippers off now because their days to pay have since ballooned, right? And now it's like they're sitting at, it was 30 days, now it's at 60 days. You're still paying your carriers within 30 days. The customers aren't picking up their phone. And that's another thing too, man. So how are you doing that? Or how have you learned, what was your biggest lesson of managing cash flow with your receivables in your business?
I mean, we've all had our failures, and so
Yeah.
have I. But I think over time, one thing I've realized is work with reputable shippers, work with reputable customers. I mean, if I'm working with a large number of shipments through a reputable customer of mine, even if they tell me, okay, their days to pay is 45 or 60, but I know it's 45 or 60. It's not probable. It's not like, okay, we'll promise you 30, but we'll pay you in 50 because our accounting is slower. I mean, all these things happen, you understand, with people changing in departments. I think just choose wisely. You don't have to do everything like we spoke earlier. Just work with a handful of good customers, and I think you'll be safe. But if you're trying to work with 100+ customers, and you're not even sure about how their AP systems work or their accounting department people, if you don't know the people within the department in their accounting, then good luck getting paid on time.
Dude, I mean, I think that that's the importance of really vetting your customers. And that's why I think as a smaller broker, or even a broker of any size, ultimately, when you can work with the right factoring company or the right financial partner to protect your operation. Because again, it's like you want to go out there and you want to build your business up, or you want to onboard customers, but then they might not have the best financials themselves, and then you get in a tough position, right? I've heard this story more than any story out there from people, whether it's a trucking company or a freight broker, who set up a shipper and then they got caught up into the amount of freight that they were getting, and they weren't watching their receivables. They didn't see that. And then it was all of a sudden $250,000, $300,000 worth of freight they were owed, and then gone. Like the customer stopped answering. Like I've heard that. If there's any story out there, Sonny, that's a consistent across the industry, it's that right there.
It's so funny. It reminds me of a story that I heard many, many, many years ago. So there was a freight broker, great freight broker, by the way, had a great customer, had him for years. And I think racked up close to $500,000 or a little bit more in the AR that he wasn't paid by this customer all of a sudden. So, made a few attempts, a few months go by, then he realizes that the customer is about to file bankruptcy. So now he's in debt. I think he was in debt like $300,000 to $500,000 to this carrier he was using predominantly for this customer. Ended up working for the carrier to pay them off. Worked for the carrier for 5 or 7 years to pay off the carrier. So you got to be really careful. I mean, it's all, it's enticing. You get all this business and people go crazy. But, you got to look at the long run.
Dude, you really do, right? And that's why because I have, Denim, they're a longtime supporter of the show. We do a monthly Financial Friday where we talk about best practices in business to raise kind of the financial acumen out there and really explain why working with somebody like that or a financial partner and what you can do to protect your business, right? And it's like the exposure that's out there for you to get in. Because, I mean, dude, 200,000, 300,000, whatever you want to throw out there like that, those are bankruptcy numbers for a lot of people if you don't do that. And that's why you need somebody to help run those credit checks on your shippers, right? Ultimately, run those credit checks, make sure that their days to pay are in line and everything else, because if not, that's what puts you out of business. And I think that's why it's so beneficial for you as a business when you're getting started out or really of any size, to have a factoring company out there with you to kind of help you manage that stuff, because otherwise you're going to end up working for somebody else for 5 years to pay off that debt to them.
That is so true. It's, I think another thing that most people don't realize is a company is just not a logo and a name. It's the company has a character. It could be a good one or a bad one. When you talk about a freight brokerage, in the beginning, a lot of factoring companies don't even want to work with you. You have to first convince them to say, okay, let your carrier work with us. We're reputable.
Yep.
After going through all those hurdles and hoops, and if you still go out of business or 2 or 3 years later because of some bad choices, you're going to have to start all that over. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of energy to get a company to be reputable, to be recognized. I mean, Wido particularly, we're fairly new still if you look at the scope of things, but
Yeah.
we're going on 10 years this November. So we have a
Dang.
10th year anniversary that we're going to be celebrating.
Congrats,
But
man.
thank you so much. But I know within those 10 years, we've worked really hard for the reputation of our company. It was not always about profit. Profit will
Yeah.
always come. Money comes last. You got to first be someone that's reputable, that someone else, with the same stature would like to sit down and talk to, have a conversation with. I mean, it's really built on reputation. It's not built on just your eagerness to get business.
Yeah, dude, and you're so that right there, Sonny, is like one of the best points that's ever been made on the show. Is it takes so long to build that credibility up, whether it's with a shipper, a carrier, financial, whatever that looks like in business, but it takes one thing to ruin all of it, right? So it's like I always talk about my number one core value in my business is do the right thing, right? And it sounds simple, but it's like it's always do the right thing. Like it might suck in the short term for me, but I know long term it's going to pay off, and it's going to be a lot easier to do it that way because you work so hard to build up, your business credit, for example. You work so hard to get that built up, and then it can go away in an instant. Same thing with a customer. And especially in today's market, this is the longest sales cycle I've ever seen. You work so long and hard to onboard somebody, and then you're just going to like let it all go away because of an uncomfortable situation like that. And it's like it takes years to build up credibility, but it takes seconds to lose all of it.
Absolutely. And it's so important that you have integrity, because even if you don't land that deal, the way you speak to your customer and the way you add value to their operation, they'll remember that. And if whoever they choose doesn't work out for whatever reason, you still have a chance, whether it be a year later or 3 years later. You've made that report with them, like, okay, you know what, let's revisit this. And I think it's really important. And that's what helped us out tremendously. I mean, there's been instances where, there was like, we took on more than we could, handle. But because of our integrity, because of our connections, something always seems to work out.
Yeah. And dude, and I think like that, again, back to kind of like what we were touching on a little bit earlier as well, is knowing what you're capable of won't hurt you in the eyes of your customers, right? Like if you get like back to that 100 load opportunity or 100, but if you're like, hey, I can't do 100, but I can do 10.
Yes.
They will not punish you for that. Like ultimately they won't. They'll respect you so much more for just coming out there and being like, hey, I would love to do all of them, but we're just not capable at this time to deliver it at the service that we want to deliver. So we can do 10, right? Or 15. Obviously these are all arbitrary numbers, but I think that for you to go out there, that's long term, that is always going to benefit you, because then eventually as you build up, you're like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Shipper, I can do 100 a day now. I got the team behind me. I have the infrastructure behind me. We can make this happen.
Absolutely. Go at your own pace and save that money for the rainy days, because I think COVID has helped a lot of strategic businessmen out there take advantage of opportunities. The ones who've actually made the cash, the liquid cash, and put it into opportunities that when they presented themselves, okay, this is great. Yeah, we can put the money in. Let's do it. That's because they never rushed it. It's like, okay, a great time comes around. We're not going to go out there and buy Ferraris. A wise business person is going to put that money away because we know there's an opportunity around the corner, and every opportunity takes cash. Yeah. You have to first put your money where your mouth is, then you get the money. So you got to have the money to do it.
That's so true, man. So, dude, what's up here for the rest of the year? Are you guys hiring anybody? Are you guys looking to expand? Kind of what's your game plan here? As we're
you said the key word, expand.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
actually we just reactivated. It was a dormant company for many years, a freight brokerage that we used on our asset base just to help out our customers in our warehousing sector.
Okay.
So we would just use our brokerage for our customers in house, but now we've re-engaged in that whole conversation of activating the brokerage. It's called Expand Freight.
Okay.
So that's the thing. You said the right word. Uh, we are looking to grow that sales team. We're trying to be aggressive, hopefully this year and next year as well, and how we're going to approach the strategy of that particular company. So yes, we're definitely looking for experienced talent, the people that already have some reputation in this industry.
Sure. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi. Hey, dude, I'm surprised we made it almost 26 minutes before that happened. Let's go.
Right.
So, dude, I was gonna say, so so you're going out there, you're building up the brokerage and everything. What is a qualified candidate to you, man? Are you looking to hire, because you're based out of the Pacific Northwest? Are you looking for somebody up there, or are you hiring kind of anywhere? Remote's fine. How are you looking to build that out? And then kind of like, what's your methodology behind that as well? Building, if you're going to do whether in person or remote.
I think remote is also equally important as in person.
Okay.
We're going to have, a few individuals here at our headquarters in Seattle. But I need people that actually live in the East Coast, live in Chicago or LA or, Florida, what have you, because they know the geography there. They know the people there. We want people that are already attending these local events and know the people out there that can help us network faster.
I like it, man. No, I think that's great. So dude, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here this morning. And, I think that, again, most importantly, it's having that plan, sticking to that plan, and really kind of pushing through with it, right? Because challenges are going to happen, things are going to happen. And if you find an excuse to not do something once, that bleeds into other days, man. And then that just snowballs in the wrong direction, right? So I think, like, ultimately, anybody can sit here and bang their head against the wall and say, like, it's challenging, it's tough, it sucks, this and that, but like, it's supposed to be hard ultimately. And when you can accept that and you can hold yourself accountable to your daily tasks, right? And when you're getting started, and that's why it's like, I've put posts out there recently where it's like, I put it out last week. Sometimes the greatest wins are looking back over 30 days or 60 days and knowing you did what you said you were going to do every day during that time, and knowing that you've cultivated the discipline to grow as you're kind of going forward, right? So it's like, that's where I personally think, like, I love the build, and those are the things that I love the most about it is it's like looking back over that time frame and being like, damn, I literally said I was going to make 35 cold calls every single day, and I did that for the last 60 days. That's a major win sometimes, and that's where you kind of got to search for it.
And that's what it is. My thing is, if I could go home right before I sleep and tell myself I've done everything humanly possible that I could do for my future today, and be honest with myself and actually believe it, then I'm okay. Whatever happens is to future. I don't control the future. I only control my present actions. That's all we can do.
Dude, I love it. Sonny, thank you so much for joining me, man. How does anybody reach out to you, though, to find out about if they're interested about working with you or just connecting with you, man?
Currently Expand website is under construction, should be up and running in about a week or 2 weeks here. But you guys can go to widologistics.com and reach out to our office. That's WIDO logistics.com. Reach out to us. We'll give you more information as to what we're looking for. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Sonne Kahlon, or the Wido Logistics and the Expand Freight page. You can find it if you just follow me. You should have a link to it. Yeah, just keep connecting. Come talk to us. We got some great opportunities coming.
I love it. And if you guys can't find Sonny for whatever reason, you guys know, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with him out there. But that's going to be it for today, you guys. I'll be live from the TIA Technovations for the next couple of days here. Yeah, I'm in my car today. It might sound a little bit like a fishbowl, but you know what, you guys? I showed up. I put in the work. I held myself accountable. And that's what's most important in the long term, you guys. So at the end of the day, you guys, if you guys got value, as always, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you all.
And now I don't know how this is going to